Ooh, hello.
All
Hello,
right,
hello.
we are live. Welcome everybody to the virtual Arizona Pride Black LGBT Literature Salon. This is the first event like this that we've done. My name is David Boyles. I'm the third Saturday coordinator for Virtual Arizona Pride, and I'm here with the lovely Felicia.
Hi. I have been behind the scenes today, posting almost live and participating in the events, but I'm also part of the virtual Arizona Pride folks.
Yes,
and David, this is wonderful. David, if you see all the events for the day, David went through and organized and herded the cats, as I like to say, and put this all together. So thank you for putting this all together and even coordinating all of us.
Oh, of course. Thank you for being here. And thank you. I want to say, thank you to everybody who participated today. We've had a bunch of really great events. We had Drag Story Hour, which we're both also involved with. I did a great talk with Shamberkia Weiss, one of our favorite authors, which was really great. Marshall Shore did an awesome panel with folks from the Black LGBT community here in Phoenix and Arizona, which was really cool. We had our Free Mom Hugs chat. Yeah, that was really cool. Yeah, if you did not see that, you can go on the AZ Gay History Facebook Live or on their channel on YouTube and check it out because it was really great. We were going to have an update from HRC Arizona about the legislature, but I actually found out from them the reason they were not able to do that, unfortunately, is this bill involving conversion therapy we thought had been killed apparently is coming back next week in the legislature, and they're currently strategizing on that. Yeah, and so they're actually going to do an update on Facebook. We're going to share that when it goes live, either probably today or tomorrow. So they're busy doing what they do, trying to work at the legislature.
So that's why we need to call people, put people into action.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So like I said, watch out for that. We'll put it up on our channels. But it looks like next week we're gonna have to call your legislators once again. All right, but yeah, so this event here, this is of course this third Saturday was for Black History Month, and so I thought about just getting a bunch of my favorite people together to read some work by Black LGBT authors. And so that's what we're doing here. We got a bunch of really great people. Also, if you'll notice down on our little crawl at the bottom of the screen, as a lot of you, I'm sure everybody at this point knows what's going on in Texas right now. I reached out to some folks I know that are from Texas or used to live there, and they gave me some information about some great organizations that work with the Black LGBT community and LGBT communities of color in Texas. And all these groups here are doing mutual aid, emergency aid right now to the folks down there. So if you got a little extra cash, throw it their way.
Yeah, they need it.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of Austin. I've been to Austin for Austin Drag Fest, and there is a huge, and I'm not being dramatic or anything, but they have a lot of homeless population. So, and I know that a lot of LGBTQ plus fall under that category. So anything you can do to help them goes a long way. So yes.
That's a really great point. Yeah.
And I am personally doing a fundraiser for the Foundation for Black Heritage and Culture, because during the pandemic, they have been feeding folks and haven't really been planning their annual event. And I know that they are, food is not, food is something that just goes like that, especially when people are in need. So things like this below are doing a lot of, I know you probably get like, oh, you get so many, why are you doing so many fundraisers? But they're all doing their thing in their own way. So it's definitely something. But let's read. Let's
get started. All right. So first up today, actually our first guest today. I'm super excited about this. This was one of our very early supporters and big fans for Virtual Arizona Pride. Was at our first event last April. Is how I got to know her, and invited her here because she is also an author and actually going to be reading some of her own work today, which I'm super excited about. So we got Evelyn Jones here. Welcome, Evelyn. Hi. Hey, Evelyn, how you doing?
Hi.
Yeah.
How are y'all doing?
Good.
Good. How about you?
Good. I'm well, thank you.
Cool.
I'm excited.
Yeah. So tell us a little about what you're reading. I'm super excited about this.
Well, I am reading from my book. It's my mother's poetry. I put it into a book and then divided it into chapters and wrote a little bit about our relationship, my life, and then gave context to each chapter of poetry. So it is called A Lifetime of Lessons, Carried On. And it is available on Amazon and paperback or on Kindle. So I wanted to, my mom passed away in 2001, and I've always wanted to do something to honor her. So this was my thing. To do that last year, I actually was just kind of just spark of inspiration and decided I'm going to sit down and write this. And I wrote and published it on Amazon in a little bit less than 2 weeks.
Wow.
I am happy about that. Never having done a book before ever on Amazon. So it was a learning experience, but
I think that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, that's really amazing.
Some of the best songs were written in like 5 minutes, so don't underestimate it.
I'm pat myself, I will be reading 2 poems. The first one's Standing Accused, and the other one's called I Am Black.
Well, we'll let you have the stage.
All right, well, Felicia and I are gonna go, to the backstage here, let you have the spotlight, and I'm excited to hear it. All right.
Thank you. Okay, so the first one is called Standing Accused. Because of the color of my skin, does that mean I will want to and take my life? Because of my skin color, does that mean that that I must take what isn't mine? Because of the color of my skin, does that mean that I don't deserve justice? Because of my skin color, does that mean that I don't want to and learn and want to be better for my children? I stand accused because I am of color. I stand accused of crimes that I did not commit. I stand accused because I want to learn to do better for myself and my children. I stand accused because I believe that I have a right to live and be respected as you have been. I stand accused because I believe that if I am the best one for the job, that I should be given the chance at that job. I stand accused because I pray instead of talking of my problems. I stand accused because I want the same as others. I stand accused because I am a human being that has the same needs as you. These things are denied to me because, yes, I am Black. In today's society, that is a bad thing to be Black in the 90s. But in my world, which matters most, being Black is the best thing that could have ever happened to me. I am very proud to be who I am in spite of those people, because I know that Judgment Day is coming and all those people will have to stand before God. Because I am Black, I feel that I am strong, both mentally and physically, because of all the things that I have been put through. And through all this, I can say that I can still love you because I love myself and God. So therefore, I can't help but to love you. That is the beauty in me. When you are in need, I can help you. When you are in pain, I will find ways to help mend you. When you just need a friend, I will be that too. As for me, you have hurt me and my family, tried to downgrade me, take my self esteem away and my culture, but you also hurt and killed my Holy Father's only son. That alone lets me know that you are not who you say you are. And in time, all will come to see just how wrong you have been to me and him. I stand accused in your eyes, but in God's eyes, I am innocent. And that is all that matters to me. So all that is happening all around me will not shake me nor knock me down. It will build me up as before. That cross that I must bear, I do carry it alone. For I know that God is carrying me and the cross both. So what you do and say will not hurt me. All that you can do is take my body, but never my soul. That will live forever. And then in time, you will see me in the light. What are you going to do then? Accuse me again? No, this time will be different. This time I will have an army of angels by my side. So you see, there's nothing you can do. I live on even in you. Don't accuse me. Love yourself. Then begin to love me. Until then, all the pain that you inflict upon me, I will take with a smile, because I know that it will only be for a while. That was Standing Accused. These poems, as I mentioned, are by my mother. She passed in 2001, Melanie Deneen Jones. And I mean, you heard me say like the 90s, so like the 90s reference. So yeah, she wrote that, showed us like in the these poems like in the mid 90s. So the next piece I am going to read is called I Am Black. They tell me that I could live that impossible dream, but I am Black. They tell me to go for a higher education, but I am Black. They tell me that if I work within the system, that all things will come true, but I am Black. They tell me that love transcends all, but I am Black. They tell me that they give all equal income, but I am Black. They try to tell me that the color of my skin doesn't matter. I know that all they tell me is not true. Not for me, not for anyone of color. Since the beginning of time, the Black race has been abused and made to feel confused. They have taken all they can from us, but somehow they cannot take away what God has given to us. That is our soul. That is the only thing that they have tried so hard to get, and they haven't gotten it from most of us. Some have lost their souls, but that is on them. Being Black is very hard because you can never change, no matter how light or how good your hair is. They still see you as being Black, and for that, they will never let you be. I believed in their dreams. I lived in their world only to see for myself that it does not matter how hard you work, you will never really be free. My body may be enslaved, but my mind nor my soul they will never get. That belongs to God. In the Bible, it speaks of these times, but I see the handwriting on the wall. They have told me all those things, but my skin is still Black, and that will never change, nor do I want it to. I know that I must work harder than the rest, and I have to be better than the best. I can never fail. Most of this is a heavy load to carry. But for me, I know that I don't carry this load alone. I look down to see someone carry me, and that is my savior. So I say to all of you, have your fun now, because the day is coming where all of your fun will come to an end. Yes, I am Black. And that was I Am Black. The book is called A Lifetime of Lessons Carried On, available on Amazon, Kindle,
Okay.
and paperback.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful.
Thank you. Yeah, that was so great. And actually, Evelyn, before we let you go, I want to show we had a comment on our Facebook feed. Jen, incredible words. Your mother sounded like she was an amazing, strong woman. And yeah, I totally agree with that. That's what I was thinking too. So yeah, thank you. And yeah, everybody watching, if you got comments, if you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, yeah, drop those, thoughts in the comments. We love to see them. And yeah, Evelyn, thank you so much. That was great. Great way to start us off tonight.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you for having me. And it's amazing how your mom wrote that in the 90s and it's still relevant.
That was another reason why I was like, I have to release this poetry. Like it was healing I feel like it was healing for me and can also be healing to those that come across her writings. So a labor of love.
Yes. Love it.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. And so next up, we have someone I think a lot of folks will know, very known man about town here in the Phoenix area. We have Garrick McFadden.
Hello. Hi. How are you guys doing?
Good. How are you?
I am trying to work my screen because my computer went out on me, so I'm close to the camera.
You're doing all right. You're perfect right there. Stay right there.
You're good. You're good.
Thank you.
Yeah. So Garrick is a very well-known, activist around town, involved with the Democratic Party, and for Black History Month has been posting every day different books by Black authors, which was part of what inspired me to reach out to you. So you want to tell us a little about what you're going to be reading for us today?
My parents were voracious readers of Black literature, Black authors, Black nonfiction. We had from Maya Angelou, we had Ben Carson's book before he went crazy. We had we had Roots, we had everything, but we had no James Baldwin.
Oh, really?
None. And if I examine it, I believe that James Baldwin's writing is still evergreen. His views on racism, his connection between the LGBTQIA community and the Black church are still relevant. But because he's Black and he was gay, he was hidden, and she was shunned and not talked about. And I read The Fire Next Time about 2 years ago, and since then, my love of Baldwin has been something that has just grown. And so I'm reading a section of Notes of a Native Son that starts, it's about the death of his father and him coming to terms with going to the funeral.
Okay. All right, great. Yeah, James Baldwin. We're talking Black LGBT literature. Can't do it without James Baldwin. So central. So I'm excited. All right. Well, Garrick,
stage is all yours.
Yep. Take it away.
My last night in New Jersey, a white friend from New York took me to the nearest big town, Trenton, to go to the movies and have a few drinks. As it turned out, he also saved me from, at the very least, a violent whipping. Almost every detail of that night stands out very clearly in my memory. I even remember the name of the movie we saw because its title impressed me as being so patently ironical. It was a movie about the German occupation of France, starring Maureen O'Hara and Charles Laughton, and called This Land Is Mine. I remember the name of the diner we walked into when the movie ended. It was the American Diner. When we walked in, the counterman asked what we wanted, and I remember answering with the casual sharpness which had become my habit. We want a hamburger and a cup of coffee. What do you think we want? I do not know why, after a year of such rebuffs, I so completely failed to anticipate his answer, which was, of course, we don't serve Negroes here. This reply failed to discompose me, at least for the moment. I made some sardonic comment about the name of the diner, and we walked out into the streets. This was the time of what was called the brownout, when the lights in all American cities were very dim. When we re-entered the streets, something happened to me that had the force of an optical illusion or a nightmare. The streets were very crowded, and I was facing north. People were moving in every direction, but it seemed to me, in this instance, that all the people I could see, and many more than that, were moving towards me, against me. And that everyone was white. I remember how their faces gleamed, and I felt like a physical sensation, a click at the nape of my neck, as though some interior string connecting my head to my body had been cut. I began to walk. I heard my friend call after me, but I ignored him. Heaven only knows what was going on in my mind. But he had the good sense not to touch me. I don't know what would have happened if he had, and to keep me in sight. I don't know what was going on in my mind either. I certainly had no conscious plan. I wanted to do something to crush these white faces, which were crushing me. I walked for perhaps a block or two until I came to an enormous, glittering, and fashionable restaurant in which I knew not even the intercession of the Virgin would cause me to be served. I pushed through the doors and took the first vacant seat I saw and at a table for two and waited. I do not know how long I waited, and I rather wonder until today what I could possibly have looked like. Whatever I looked like, I frightened the waitress, who shortly appeared, and the moment she appeared, all of my fury flowed towards her. I hated her white face, and for her great, astounded, frightened eyes. I felt that if she found a black man so frightening, I would make her fright worthwhile. She did not ask me what I wanted, but repeated as though she had learned it somewhere. We don't serve Negroes here. She did not say it with a blunt derisive hostility to which I had grown so accustomed, but rather with a note of apology in her voice and fear. This made me colder and more murderous than ever. I felt I had to do something with my hands. I wanted her to come close enough for me to get her neck between my hands. So I pretended not to have understood her, hoping to draw her closer. And she did step a very short step closer, with her pencil posed incongruously over her pad, and repeated the formula. Don't serve Negroes here. Somehow, with the repetition of that phrase, which was already ringing in my head like 1,000 bells of a nightmare, I realized that she would never come any closer, and that I would have to strike from a distance. There was nothing on the table but an ordinary water mug, half full of water, and I picked this up and hurled it with all my strength at her. She ducked, and it missed. It missed her and shattered against the mirror behind the bar. And with that sound, my frozen blood abruptly thawed. I returned from wherever I had been. I saw for the first time the restaurant, the people, with their mouths open, already, as it seemed to me, rising as one man, and I realized what I had done and where I was, and I was frightened. I rose and began running for the door. A round, pot-bellied man grabbed me by the nape of my neck just as I reached the doors and began to beat me about the face. I kicked him and got loose and ran into the streets. My friend whispered, "Run," and I ran. My friend stayed outside the restaurant long enough to misdirect my pursuers and the police who arrived. He told me at once. I do not know what I said to him when he came to my room that night. I could not have said much. I felt in the oddest, most awful way that I had somehow betrayed him. I lived it over and over and over again, the way one relives an automobile accident. And it was after it had happened and one finds oneself alone and safe. I could not get over two facts, both equally difficult for the imagination to grasp. And one was that I could have been murdered. But the other one was that I had been ready to commit murder. I saw nothing very clearly, but I did see this, that my life, my real life, was in danger, and not from anything other people might do, but from the hatred I carried in my own heart. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, Garrick. That was amazing.
That was good. That was so good. And isn't it amazing how that is all still just like Evelyn's the poem, this selection, it's all still relevant, and you can't run away from what's there. The even though people don't say the same exact words, they it comes across, and things like that go through people's mind if they're going to be murdered, or if they're, I mean, it's crazy to even think that. Even myself, sometimes I have, been in situations where you just go, oh, I mean, it could be life or death.
Mm-hmm.
So, wow. Yeah. Thank you for reading that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Garrick. That was great. All right. Sorry here. I'm still getting used to our StreamYard setup here. I've been on this end of it. I've done the StreamYards before, but someone else always hits the buttons.
You know, I'm enjoying you doing all of it.
I know. You're usually the one who does this. Yeah. Yeah. All right. So next up, I'm super excited. Our next couple of readers, as you know, a lot of you will know, when I'm not doing this stuff, my day job is I teach at ASU, and we've got a couple of students coming up now. Yeah. And so first up, I have a student who was my student last semester for English 105, Honors English at ASU. And just really awesome person I've got to know. And so I'm super excited to have her here. So we have Kelsi Kitagawa, Kitagawa. She tutored me on this earlier. I'm gonna bring her in. Hi, Kelsi. How you doing?
Oh, hi. I'm glad you said her last name, because I would have messed that up. I always mess up people's names.
Mm-hmm. It's okay.
Yeah. So how you doing, Kelsi?
I'm good. I'm excited to be here.
Cool. Yeah, I'm excited that you're here. So tell us a little about what you're reading.
I am reading a poem by I think it's Audre Lorde.
I've always heard Audrey, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know if it's Audrey or Audra, but I'm not sure. But it's called Afterimages, and we analyze a lot of poetry in my senior English class. And I would do my own research, and this is like one of the poems that I wish we would have read and analyzed. So I decided to pick this one.
Yeah, it's great. And that's perfect. Audrey Lorde just had a birthday this week. I think it was like Wednesday. It was her birthday.
And Google celebrated it. So Yeah, go for it.
Great.
Yes.
All right. Well, take it away, Kelsi.
Thank you. Afterimages by Audre Lorde. However the image enters, its force remains within my eyes. Rock-strewn caves where dragonfish evolve. Wild for life, relentless and acquisitive. Learning to survive where there is no food. My eyes are always hungry and remembering. However the image enters, its force remains. A white woman stands bereft and empty. A black boy hacked into a murderous lesson. Recalled in me forever, like a lurch of earth on the edge of sleep. Etched into my visions, food for dragonfish that learn to live upon whatever they must eat. Fused images beneath my pain. The Pearl River floods through the streets of Jackson, a Mississippi summer televised. Trapped houses kneel like sinners in the rain. A white woman climbs from her roof to a passing boat. Her fingers tarry for a moment on the chimney. Now awash, tearless and no longer young, she holds a tattered baby's blanket in her arms. In a flickering afterimage of the nightmare rain, a microphone, thrust up against her flat, bewildered words. We just come from the bank yesterday, borrowing money to pay the income tax. Now everything's gone. I never knew it could be so hard. Despair weighs down her voice like Pearl River mud caked around the edges. Her pale eyes scanning the camera for help or explanation unanswered. She shifts her search across the watered street, dry-eyed. Hard, but not this hard. Two tow-headed children hurl themselves against her, hanging upon her coat like mirrors. Until a man with ham-like hands pulls her aside, snarling, "She ain't got nothing more to say." And that lie hangs in his mouth like a shred of rotting meat. I inherited Jackson, Mississippi. For my majority, it gave me Emmett Till, his 15 years puffed out like bruises on plump boy cheeks. His only Mississippi summer, whistling a 21-gun salute to Dixie as a white girl passed him in the street, and he was baptized, my son, forever in the midnight waters of the Pearl. His broken body is the afterimage of my 21st year. When I walked through a northern summer, my eyes averted. From each corner's photographies, newspapers, protest posters, magazines, police story, confidential, true. The avid insistence of detail, pretending insight or information, the length of gash across the dead boy's loins, his grieving mother's lamentation, the severed lips. How many burns? His gouged out eyes, sewed shut upon the screaming covers, louder than life. All over, the veiled warning, the secret relish of a black child's mutilated body, fingered by street corner eyes, bruise upon livid bruise, and wherever I looked that summer, I learned to be at home with children's blood, with savored violence, with pictures of black broken flesh, used, crumpled, and discarded, lying amid the sidewalk, refused, like a raped woman's face. A black boy from Chicago whistled on the streets of Jackson, Mississippi, testing what he'd been taught was a manly thing to do. His teachers ripped his eyes out, his sex, his tongue, and flung him to the pearl-weighted with stone in the name of white womanhood. They took their aroused honor back to Jackson and celebrated in a whorehouse, the double ritual of white manhood confirmed. If earth and air and water do not judge them, who are we to refuse a crust of bread? Emmett Till rides the crest of the Pearl. Whistling 24 years, his ghost lay like the shade of a raped woman, and a white girl has grown older in costly honor. What did she pay to never know its price? Now the Pearl River speaks its muddy judgment, and I can withhold my pity and my bread. Hard, but not this hard. Her face is flat with resignation and despair, with ancient and familiar sorrows, a woman surveying her crumpled future as the white girl besmirched by Emmett's whistle, never allowed her own tongue, without power or conclusion, unvoiced. She stands adrift in the ruins of her honor, and a man with an executioner's face pulls her away. Within my eyes, the flickering after images of a nightmare reign. A woman wrings her hands beneath the weight of agonies remembered. I wade through summer ghosts, betrayed by vision, hers and my own, becoming dragonfish to survive. The horrors we are living with tortured lungs, adapting to breathe blood. A woman measures her life's damage. My eyes are caves, chunks of etched rock, tied to the ghost of a black boy, whistling, crying and frightened. Her tow-headed children cluster like little mirrors of despair, their father's hands upon them, and soundlessly, a woman begins to weep. Thank you.
These just keep getting better.
I know.
I love her writing style because she is just so vivid. She's just so she just wants to take you immediately. She doesn't say, "Come on, we're gonna take you with these sweet little words." She says, "Let's go." So you read that beautifully. That I was gonna do her, and then I saw you on the list, and I was like, but yeah, you did great. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, thanks. That was great. And yeah, I just couldn't help but thinking, you mentioned at the beginning how this was a poem you wished you had read in your senior English class. And when Kelsi was my student last semester, we read the book March by Congressman John Lewis. And he talks about the Emmett Till murder. It happened when he was a teenager. They were basically the same age. Yeah. And there were a lot of people in that class who had never heard of Emmett Till, didn't learn about Emmett Till. Yeah. And so, yeah, I know. So some of the things that you find out that they're not teaching in school will shock you, especially when it comes to stuff like this, when it comes to race and our history with race in America. And so great. You're grateful you're, keeping that alive. And, Audre Lorde was keeping it alive, and now you are too. So thank you, Kelsi.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, of course. All right. And all right, so up next we have actually another ASU student, one I've not had the pleasure of actually having in one of my classes, but we met through like ASU Twitter, basically, right? So we got Audrey Zelinka. Hi, Audrey, how you doing?
Hi, I'm great. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, of course. All right, tell us about yours. You're doing one of my favorite writers.
I'm doing a poem by Essex Hemphill. And I think the first Essex Hemphill poem I ever even heard of was The Occupied Territories, which I'm pretty sure you shared somewhere. And I just really love his writing and admire him a lot as a person. And a lot of his writing is about things that took place during the AIDS crisis and like what it was to be a sexually active Black gay man during that time period, like how complex and dangerous and everything that was. And the AIDS crisis is just something that like I care a lot about and I know a lot about, and I want to like work on or take part in like doing work for someday.
Oh wow, what inspired that?
I don't know. It's just super interesting. I like the science part, the activism, the art, everything that's come out of it.
Say that one part again. There's some people that don't understand the science part.
Oh yeah. I mean, just the fact that like it took so long for anything to be done about anything, and that PrEP and PEP aren't even like globally common medicines, and that there are ways to essentially live a completely normal life and be HIV positive. And it's like resources that are so unavailable, especially to people of color and poor people of color. And so it's just work that I'd really like to be involved in.
Yes, I love it.
Yeah, when Audrey and I first met and started talking, they were reading And the Band Played On at the time. And I was like blown away by that someone of their age was reading And the Band Played On, and that was amazing. So
more kudos to you, yes.
Yeah. All right, so we're gonna turn it over to you now.
So this is Cordon Negro by Essex Hemphill. I drink champagne early in the morning instead of leaving my house with an M16 and nowhere to go. I'm dying twice as fast as any other American between 18 and 35. This disturbs me, but I try not to show it in public. Each morning I open my eyes as a miracle. The blessing of opening them is temporary on any given day. I could be taken out. I could go off. I could forget to be careful. Even my brothers hunt me. I am the only one who values my life, and sometimes I don't give a damn. My love life can kill me. I am faced daily with choosing violence or a demeanor that saves every other life but my own. I won't cross over. It's time someone else came to me, not to patronize me physically, sexually, or humorously. I'm sick of being an endangered species, sick of being a goddamn statistic. So what are my choices? I could leave with no intention of coming home tonight. I could go crazy downtown and raise hell on a rooftop with my rifle. I could live for a brief moment on the 6 o'clock news, or I can masquerade another day through the corridors of commerce and American dreams. I'm dying twice as fast as any other American. So I pour myself a glass of champagne, I cut it with a drop of orange juice. After, I swallow my liquid Valium. My private celebration for being alive this morning. I leave my shelter. I guard my life with no apologies. My concerns are small and personal. And that's it.
Am I on? Oh,
yeah.
I was talking.
Yeah, man.
Right to the point.
Mm-hmm.
Right to the point.
And yeah, as you mentioned, I mean, even someone of my age who grew up sort of in the, getting kind of the tail end of the AIDS epidemic and really the plague years and being aware of it, things like PrEP now being available is great, of course. But you do worry that people are going to lose that history of what happened, in the 80s and 90s. And so it's really important, just like we were talking about with Emmett Till earlier, also to keep this alive and, educate people about this.
That's great that you want to keep carrying it forward and keep learning about it. So I say keep on keeping on.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Audrey.
Great job.
Yeah. All right. Up next, we're going to have another one of our kind of original Virtual Arizona Pride supporters and fans. And one of the cool things about Virtual Arizona Pride, we are Arizona, but because we are all online, we get people from all over the country and the world participating. And this is a good friend of mine who has participated a lot, even though she's in Connecticut. So welcome, Tiffany Wilgar.
Hi.
Hi, Tiffany.
Hello.
Hi. This is so much fun.
Yeah, it's been great so far. And yeah, thank you so much for being part of it.
Oh, yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Mm-hmm.
What part of the world did you say she's in?
I'm in Connecticut.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so way over there.
Yeah, it's been snowing all week, so there's.
Oh no! Don't bring that here. Don't bring it here. We might get snow just by talking to you right now. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
no.
Yeah. We're especially with what's going on in Texas. Very happy about our weather right now. We don't need to like we would be just like Texas if that happened here because we are not prepared for it either. Just
You're right.
Yeah.
I have more shorts than pants.
Yeah. All right, Tiffany. Tell us about your reading. This is an author actually you introduced me to, which I'm very grateful for.
Did I? Oh, that makes me happy. I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm going to read from Joma Aluo's So You Want to Talk About Race? I'm going to read the chapter.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah, I'm going to read the chapter about intersectionality because I think it's really good. And I've been a fan of hers for a really long time. She's done some really excellent interviews and just some other sort of writing online even before she published this book in 2018. And I was a fan of hers way back when. And I've had my students read this book and talk about it because like David, I'm a professor of rhetoric and writing. And so I use this book to talk about, rhetorics of race.
Wow. I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, high recommend for anything that she's ever done.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
Okay, now I'm all excited.
Yeah, this is a really great book for, if you need to talk to especially your white friends about race, like an introduction to it. I think she's really great for that. For
I might have to Amazon some people.
Yeah. All right. Well, Tiffany, Take it away.
Stage is all yours.
All right, great. I just have a hard copy, unlike everybody else. All right. What is intersectionality and why do I need it? I am so sorry, I said, as my phone buzzed again. Can you excuse me for a minute? I have this thing I need to take care of with my kids really quick. My dinner companion graciously nodded in reply, and I rushed upstairs to my hotel room to my laptop. Come on, I said to myself as I tried to quickly run the online program. I knew that every minute this took made me more and more rude and more of a liar. No, there was no issue with my kids. And yes, it's pretty shitty to use them as an excuse, but hey, consider it a rare indulgence for a single parent. But I was damned if I was going to say, sorry, I have to leave our dinner to go run a program to block thousands of Twitter trolls who think I hate Black men before this shit goes viral and I can never use Twitter again. There's no rescuing dinner after that. It started quietly enough weeks earlier. I had found out that a famous Black male musician was coming to town to perform. This musician, who shall remain nameless, was long believed by many, including myself, to be a sexual predator of multiple young Black women and teenage girls. How could a man so notorious for suspicion of such heinous offenses sell out an arena in liberal Seattle? How is this man still rich and famous? I tweeted out some of my frustration, expressing the desire that, if he'd ever see jail time due to a society that did not value Black womanhood, he would at least be forever reminded of his misdeeds in any venture he tried to undertake. Plus a lot of swear words. I was angry. I really care about the plight of Black women and girls. The tweets got some likes and a few retweets, but as I said, society doesn't really value Black womanhood, and the conversation didn't gain much traction. That is until Hotep Twitter found a hold of my tweets. To Hotep Twitter, think Black men's rights activists with the added fun of wildly inaccurate Egyptian origin mythology on Twitter. The fact that I would use so many swear words on a Black man accused of assaulting multiple Black women led them to one conclusion. I hated Black men. Not only did I hate Black men, but I was on the side of the lynch mobs, on the side of the school-to-prison pipeline. I was the house Negro, the high yellow bed wench who'd spread her legs for her white master. For real, these are words that have been sent to me. And before I knew what was happening, I had thousands of angry Black men and some Black women interrupting my dinner with buzzes on my phone notifying me that they were working as hard as possible to drown my Twitter feed in hatred. To those clamoring to send me hateful messages, I had betrayed Black people with my comments against a Black musician. I had taken the side of white oppressors by speaking so publicly about a Black man's crimes. But this is because their idea of Blackness and the oppressions that Black people face did not include Black women and the specific oppressions we face from being both Black and women. While they were fighting to defend this Black man, they were giving little thought to his Black female victims or the other Black women who may have been harmed by seeing someone so widely known for harming Black women lauded so publicly. This sort of hurtful denial of the various oppressions that I and many others have to navigate is something I'm often forced to confront in office meetings, in social justice forums, in feminist activist groups, in government and social programs aimed at fighting inequality, and most often on the internet. I'd seen the consequences of this sort of anger at people who demanded that their various identities be taken into account when discussing larger social groups. And I'd seen how quickly this anger can turn into a full-scale online mob. I'd seen how these campaigns of harassment can take on a life of their own, lasting weeks, months, even years. I knew that it could lead to doxing campaigns where angry internet vigilantes publish your home address and work info into the masses. I knew that there was a limited amount of time to contain this problem before there would be no saving my online presence, and I'd have to leave my Twitter account for dead. Twitter may seem like many to be a frivolous thing to panic over, but this is not just a fun online community for me. Twitter is a huge part of my job. As a Black woman, it's very hard to build a platform for your writing in a white, male-dominated industry that shows little interest in giving Black women regular columns or placing them behind a news anchor's desk. Twitter is a huge tool in finding and maintaining my audience, and it is how many editors who want to commission the work of women of color find me. I simply cannot afford to be pushed off that platform. I scrambled to block as many of these attackers as I could in an attempt to stem this assault in as much time as I felt I could be away without worrying my very patient dinner companion too much or making her feel abandoned. Then I closed my laptop, said an atheist prayer for the best, and went back downstairs to apologize and finish dinner. By the next day, the uproar had mostly died down. I'd been able to cut off access to my account to a large number of Twitter users that online investigators were hoping to send to my page to harass me. When the return on troll investment, the barrage of hate met with my frantic pleas and denials had proved underwhelming. The bullies had moved on. I breathed a sigh of relief at the crisis averted. But then I was almost as quickly overcome with sadness. All I had done was express anger at the abuse of Black women. All I had done was ask people to care about us as they did about others. All I had done was ask for the fight for Black lives to include Black women too, and that I had to block tens of thousands of Black people, my people, who wanted me to pay for my audacity. And I, like many other prominent Black women on social media, felt very alone and very abused, because in our struggle for social justice and equality, we are often exploited and discarded. White women will heap praise on my words, calling for the destruction of the patriarchy, and then turn around and ask why I had to be so decisive or say dismissively that I sound like Al Sharpton when I dare to bring up race. Black men will follow me by the dozens after each essay I write, calling me out on white supremacy, but will forget all of that and call me a feminist tool of slave masters when I demand that Black women be treated with respect and dignity by everyone, even Black men. And even though Black Lives Matter was founded by Black women, and even though Black women have been at the heart of every feminist movement in this country's history, nobody marches for us when we are raped, when we are killed, and we are denied equal work for equal pay. Nobody marches for us. Intersectionality, the belief that our social justice movements must consider all of the intersections of identity, privilege, and oppression that people face in order to be just and effective, is the number one requirement of all the work that I do. When I first learned about intersectionality in college, I honestly had no idea what a huge part of my life it would later become. What was first an interesting, if not abstract, theory I wrote about for college papers became a matter of my political, social, spiritual, and yes, even physical survival. Because I am not capable of cutting myself into pieces. I am not capable of cutting away my Blackness in order to support feminism. That views the needs of women of color are divisive inconveniences. I am not capable of cutting away my womanhood in order to stand by Black men who prey on Black women. I am a Black woman. And every minute of every day, and I need you to march for me too. While this book is about race, I'm sure you know that we as people are far more than just our race. But even further, our experience of race is shaped by far more than just our skin color and hair texture. And just as racial identity is not the only type of identity in our society, racial oppression is not the only form of oppression in our society. Racial privilege is not the only form of privilege in our society. Each of us has a myriad of identities, our gender, class, race, sexuality, and so much more that inform our experiences in life and our interactions with the world. As we saw when we were checking our privilege, that's referring to an earlier chapter, the difficult hierarchies, privileges, and oppressions assigned to these different identities affect our lives in many ways. These privileges and oppressions do not exist in a vacuum, however, and can combine with each other, compound each other, mitigate each other, and contradict each other. We walk through the world with all of our identities at once, and therefore, our day has an endless number of possible combinations of outcomes depending on how individual events and situations we encounter interact with our individual identities. I am a Black queer woman. If I'm harassed on the street, I don't know if it's because I'm Black, if it's because I'm a woman, or if it's because I'm queer. In fact, it may be all three reasons at once. But many of our social justice movements would fail to consider the ways in which our multiple identities interact or intersect. For example, when feminist groups are discussing how to fight the street harassment of women. As a Black, queer, middle-class woman, my queer identity may often be overlooked by anti-racist or feminist movements. My female identity may be overlooked by anti-racist or queer movements. My Black identity may be overlooked by feminist or queer movements, and my middle-class identity may well cause me to overlook poor people in all movements. And when that happens, none of them can really help me or many others. This is very often the case in our movements and our society at large. Feminist movements, for example, often fail to consider the different needs and challenges that many women of color face and how they differ from what white women face. I've done a fair amount of work in support of reproductive rights, and I'm still surprised at how often reproductive rights groups claim they are fighting for reproductive rights for all women, yet consistently ignore the documented racial bias in the medical field that keeps many women of color from accessing reproductive health care, regardless of law. How does this happen? How does our social justice efforts often fail to help the most vulnerable in our populations? This is primarily a result of unexamined privilege. Because of how rarely our privilege is examined, even our social justice movements will tend to focus on the most privileged and the most well-represented people in those groups. Anti-racism groups will often tend to prioritize the needs of straight men of color. Feminist groups tend to prioritize the needs of white women, and LGBT groups will tend to prioritize the needs of gay, white, cisgender men. Disability rights groups will often tend to prioritize the needs of disabled white men. Imagine where this leaves a disabled Latinx trans woman on any group's list of priorities. Because the needs of the most privileged are usually the ones most prioritized, they are the only ones considered when discussing solutions to oppression and inequality. These solutions, not surprisingly, often leave the underprivileged populations in our movements behind. The idea of intersectionality provides a more inclusive and alternative to the status quo. Coined by the brilliant race theorist and civil rights activist Kimberly Crenshaw in 1989, the term intersectionality was born from Crenshaw's work to shed light on the ways in which the experiences in both race and gender intertwine to uniquely impact the lives of Black women and women of color. Crenshaw referred to those intersections of race and gender as intersectionality and stressed the need to consider intersectionality in our social justice movements. Intersectionality is a theory and practice, was quickly added by prominent Black feminists to describe the need they saw for a more holistic view of race and gender. From there, intersectionality spread to a large section of feminist scholarship and activism, and was expanded to include class, ability, and sexuality as well. Intersectionality and the necessity of considering intersectionality applies to more than just our social justice efforts. Our government, our education system, economic system, and social systems all should consider intersectionality if they have any hope of effectively serving the public. Intersectionality helps ensure that fewer people are left behind and that our efforts to do better for some do not make things worse for others. Intersectionality helps us stay true to our values of justice and equality by helping to keep our privilege from getting in our own way. Intersectionality makes our systems more effective and more fair. So if intersectionality makes all of our social justice efforts so much better, then why isn't it a more prominent part of our social justice movements? I believe there are many reasons that why social justice movements have been slow to adopt intersectional practices. And then from here is like a bullet pointed list. So I'm just going to read the list. Intersectionality slows things down. It's the simple truth. You often hear people say things like, well, let's just work on what the majority needs first and we'll get to the rest later. Intersectionality brings people face to face with their own privilege. Intersectionality decentralizes people who are used to being the primary focus of movements they are a part of. Intersectionality forces people to interact with, listen to, and consider people they don't normally interact with, listen to, or consider. These challenges to intersectionality are not easy to overcome, but it's worth the effort. I strongly believe that the vast majority of people who set out to fight racism, sexism, ableism, and other forms of oppression do so because they really do want to make the world a better place for all people. But if you don't embrace intersectionality, even if you make progress for some, you will look around one day and find that you've become the oppressor of others. So how do you increase the intersectionality in your discussions of race? Here are some questions you can ask yourself. And again, it's a list because this book is very practical. How might race, gender, sexuality, ability, class, or sex impact this subject? You don't have to have the exact answers to this question, but asking it of yourself will give you ideas from other viewpoints to seek out. Could the identity differences between me and the person I'm talking with about race be contributing to our differences of opinion or perspective? Are the people in my racial justice conversations and the opinions being considered truly representing the diversity of identities that interact with the subject matter being discussed? Does my scholarship of racial justice reflect that diversity of identities impacted by racial oppression? Like, whose books and articles am I using to inform my opinions? Am I listening to people whose identities and experiences differ from my own? Am I looking for what I don't know? Am I shifting some focus of power away from the most privileged in the conversation? Am I providing a safe space for marginalized people to speak out? It's not enough for you to personally believe in intersectionality. We need to start demanding intersectionality of all those who seek to join in the social justice movements. If you want to call attention to the need for a greater focus on intersectionality in your discussions of race and racial justice efforts, here are some things to remember. And again, it's a list. Most people don't know what intersectionality is, and unknown words can put people on the defensive. You may need to explain further with examples in order to put this into practice. It's often best to start first with real life examples of how this conversation or project could be more intersectional. The concept of intersectionality is more easily understood when viewed as an opportunity to do better and to do more instead of just an examination of the ways in which these efforts are failing. Intersectionality is absolutely always important to all discussions of race and social justice. Do not let other people bully you out of prioritizing it. Remember, while embracing intersectionality is vital for our efforts of fighting racism and other oppression, it applies to all aspects of our lives, not just to our movements. Who gets to speak at company meetings? For whom do you vote? How is your child's school curriculum developed? Who is considered when developing environmental policy? Everything we do publicly can be more inclusive and uplifting with intersectionality, and everything we do can become exclusionary and oppressive without it. Intersectionality and the recognition and confrontation of our privilege can make us better people with better lives.
All right, great.
Did you like it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I mean, with everything we were talking about with the earlier readings, I mean, I think we definitely needed to talk about intersectionality at some point tonight. I think that summed up a lot of what we've already been talking about earlier.
Sounds like I need to get a book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, Evelyn in the comments said the same thing. So I think we made a few sales today, which is good.
I mean, I might read the book and then hand it off. I mean, that is wow.
Yeah, we could create a daisy chain.
Yes. Oh my God.
All right. Well, thank you, Tiffany.
Thanks, Tiffany.
Thank you.
All right. And just a reminder, I know we've had some people joining us. Down at the bottom of the screen there, those donate links you see, those are for organizations in Texas that are working with queer communities of color, Black queer people, supporting them right now through everything they're dealing with, providing direct aid, providing food, housing, things like that. So if you got to have some money to spare, please support them. All right, up next we have someone, again, a lot of folks will know, very well known around, all around town, and in our community of kind of virtual pride and drag story hour has been involved with both before. We have Sassy Diazz.
Hi.
Sassy.
I see we got the big hair, big afro memo.
Just a little something, something tiny for the event.
Subtle. Something subtle.
Subtle.
Yeah.
Going to the store.
What are you reading today?
I'm reading one of my favorite poems from one of my favorite authors, Langston Hughes. The Negro Speaks of Rivers by Langston Hughes.
Oh, I read some things about him.
Yeah, he was very much a prominent writer during the Harlem Renaissance. Can't speak. Definitely was valued in many other genres of writing. He wasn't just a great poet. He actually wrote many, many stories. He actually has a book of stories that are short stories about his trip, like when he was going to see his father from Missouri to New York. So there's a small book of just short stories of things he would see, and this poem is actually in that book of small stories. So it's one of my favorites, and Langston Hughes has just always been something that inspired me.
Yeah, this is probably one of my favorite poems of all time. I'm super excited. All right, and we're gonna let you take it away.
All right, so I'm reading The Negro Speaks of Rivers by Langston Hughes. I've known rivers. I've known rivers ancient as the world and older than the flow of human blood in human veins. My soul has grown deep like the rivers. I bathed in the Euphrates when downs were young. I built my hut near the Congo, and it lulled me to sleep. I looked upon the Nile and raised the pyramids above it. I heard the singing of the Mississippi when Abe Lincoln went down to New Orleans. I've seen its muddy bosom turn all golden in the sunset. I've known rivers, ancient, dusky rivers. My soul has grown deep like the rivers.
That was great. Thank you, Sassy.
Thank you, guys.
I want an audiobook of you just reading like some of these poems now. That was just like the perfect reading.
Yes. So the reason why I was reading on Langston Hughes recently is because there was like some rumors, which means it's not like solidified or set in stone, that he was a part of our community.
Yes, that is one of the biggest things about him, that he was fam.
Yeah, and so I was like, oh, really? And then I fell into this rabbit hole where I was like, oh, and like people like having like they're talking about their interactions with him and him meeting with somebody else, and you know, like, and them disappearing, but he was very private. And plus in that time it was almost like illegal, wasn't it?
It was illegal.
Yeah, I mean, well, like being Black was still like a thing that was very taboo. So like, don't be gay and Black. Also, like that was just extra. Like, so if you was gay, like you had to be quiet about being gay.
So, and somebody like dissected one of his poems and was like, "This could be like him telling us that he's gay." But I was like, "Oh,
he has a couple poems that have like underlying like hints of things, and you're like."
You're like, when I read that the first time, I did not see that, but okay.
I didn't catch that, but I caught it. Okay.
Yeah, and actually, I mean, a lot of the poets in the Harlem Renaissance, a lot of the writers, we either know, they were, in the community, or we at least suspect it. But of course, most of them could not be out with it in any explicit way. Actually, we were talking about Essex Hemphill earlier. Essex Hemphill was actually involved in this documentary that came out in the late 80s called Looking for Langston, that was about him, being gay, and had a lot of the young gay poets like Essex Hemphill in it. Langston Hughes' family sued the filmmakers and prevented them from using his poetry in the film, because they did not want anything to do with that.
Oh.
Oh.
Yeah, they were not. You couldn't, like I said, you couldn't be gay and Black. Like, pick one.
That would be hard today. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I'm not picking one. Like, you gotta pick. Lock me up then, cause.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, Sassy.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. And so that takes us to our last reader, which is...
Who's that?
Yeah, Miss Felicia Minor.
Okay, so I picked this book because if you watch our show, I talked about the color blue, and that being a thing that is pressed on the males of whatever.
Mhm.
And so I think that's what drew me to this book. But I also followed George M. Johnson on Twitter, which led me to, I go down these weird online rabbit holes and fall into things. But I have the book on Kindle, but I just ordered the hardback so I could, or the hardcover so I could see. I like to feel the book.
Me too.
So I'm just gonna read the introduction because that kind of gives you a clue of what the rest of the book is like. But the book has pockets of surprises and things that people should definitely read for themselves. So,
cool. All right, I'm excited.
The introduction reads, Black Queer Here. The story of how I entered the world was a foreshadowing. When my aunt first saw my head full of jet black curly hair, crown from my mother's womb, she ran into the hospital's hallway where my family waited. It's a girl! It's a girl! She yelled, to my grandmother's excitement and to my father's slight disappointment. But by the time my aunt got back to the delivery room and I was fully born, she realized her quick assumption would soon need correcting. She ran back out to the family and said, actually, it's a boy. The it's a girl, no, it's a boy mix-up is funny on paper, but not quite so hilarious in real life, especially when the star of that story struggles with their identity. Gender is one of the biggest projections placed onto children at birth, despite families having no idea how the baby will truly turn out. In our society, a person's sex is based on their genitalia. That decision is then used to assume a person's gender as boy or girl, rather than a spectrum of identities that the child should be determining themselves. Nowadays, we're assigning gender even before birth. Yes, we have become socially conditioned to participate in the gendering of children at the earliest possible moment. Whenever a sonogram can identify its genitalia, gender reveal parties have become a trendy way to celebrate the child's fate, steering them down a life of masculine or feminine ideals before ever meeting them. It's as if the more visible LGBTQIAP+ people become, the harder the heterosexual community attempts to apply new norms. I think the majority fear becoming the minority. And so and so they will do anything and everything to protect their power. I often wonder what this world would look like if people were simply told, you're having a baby with a penis or a vagina or other genitalia. Look up intersex if you're confused about other. What if parents were also given instructions to nurture their baby by paying attention to what the child naturally gravitates toward and simply feed those interests? What if parents let their child explore their own gender instead of pushing them down one of those two roads society tells us exist? When our gender is assigned at birth, we are also assigned responsibilities to grow and to maneuver through the life based on the simple checking of those boxes: male, female, Black, white, straight, gay. Kids don't fit the perfect boxes often. Kids who don't fit the perfect boxes are often left asking themselves, am I a girl? Am I a boy? Am I both? Am I neither? As a child, I struggled mightily with these questions and that struggle continued to show up in various ways throughout my life. Now, as an adult, I have a much better grasp on sexuality, gender, and the way society pressures us to conform to what has been the norm. I understand how this sense of normality doesn't hold a space for those of us who don't fit the aesthetic of what girls or boys should be, or how a man or woman should perform. Unfortunately, we are still struggling to move the conversation past an assumed identity at birth, and LGBTQIAP+ people are not just fighting for the right to self-identify and be accepted in society that is predominantly composed of two genders, which would be the bare minimum of acceptance. We are also fighting to survive physical acts of violence. Many of us are not even surviving that. The spectrum of our traumas can be as broad as our identities. I started writing this book with the intention that every chapter would end with solutions for all the uncomfortable and confusing circumstances I experienced as a gay Black child in America. I quickly learned this book would be about so much more. About the overlap of my identities and the importance of sharing how those intersections create my privilege and my oppression. Many of us carry burdens from the traumas of our past, and they manifest into our adulthood. We all go through stages of accepting or struggling with our various identities, gay, straight, or non-identifying. And race and various other factors play a role in how we navigate them. Many of us are always in the state of working through something, always in the state of becoming a more aware version of self. This book is an exploration of my two of my identities, Black and queer, and how I became aware of their intersections within myself and in society. How I've learned that neither of these identities can be contained in a simple box that I enter the room as both of them, despite the spaces and environments I must navigate. In the white community, I'm seen as a Black man first, but that doesn't negate the queer identity that will still face discrimination. In the Black community, where I more often find myself, it is not the Black male identity that gets questioned immediately. It's the intersection with queerness that is used to reduce my Blackness and the overall image of Black men. Because this is a memoir, I'm sharing some of my personal memories with you. These memories are specific to my experience as a kid, teen, and young adult. But they also underline some of the universal experiences of Black and/or queer people. My struggles are that of Black men and queer men and people who exist at the intersection of both identities. That's where the manifesto part comes in. I believe that the dominant society establishes an idea of what is normal. Normal is simply to suppress differences, which means that any of us fall outside of their, which means that any of us who fall out of their normal means that any of us who fall outside their normal will eventually be oppressed. In each chapter of this book, I'll tell you memories of my experiences growing up and what I think they mean in a larger context living as a Black queer person. I grew up hearing the N-word, which was a term of endearment in my home. It becomes a term of endearment in many Black families. By the time I was in middle school, I was using the word regularly with friends. It was the thing to do as a 13-year-old. That is, to curse and use the N-word. We were all doing it. It was how we greeted one another, how we clowned one another. We had different tones and inflections that, excuse me, that could tell you the way the word was being used, but never with the ER at the end. We knew saying the word with the hard ER meant something different. By high school, I stopped using it. Surrounded by whiteness, I wasn't going to dare let my classmates get comfortable using that word with or around me. Anytime a white student even tried to utter it, I checked them. White kids love to test Black kids on things like that. Certain Black kids were fighting so hard to fit in, they would let white kids steal that part of our culture just so they could pretend they were accepted in white society. By college, I was back in a predominantly Black school, back to using the N-word again with my new friends. It was like middle school, except as an adult, I knew I could use it. No one could say anything to me. Truth be told, most professors hated that we used the word. They were of the opinion that the word had too much hatred in it for us to ever be able to take back full ownership in any variation. The N-word was the last word heard by many of my ancestors when they were beaten and shackled, forced into enslavement in a new land. It was the last word heard by my people when they were lynched as a spectacle for white people. Strange fruit hanging from the poplar trees, as the great Nina Simone would sing. So, for many of my professors who grew up during Jim Crow, experiencing legalized segregation, there was no reason to be proud of that word. It was during those years in college and right after college that the NAACP and the National Action Network decided that it was time for the Black community to bury the N-word. There was this belief that if we stopped using it, the word itself would lose its power. This brought out arguments on both sides. People for and against this action to destroy a word that is so tied to the most painful parts of history in America. I began to shift to the side that thought it was best to bury it. At the time, I was learning how to be a respectable Negro. With the good grades and a college degree, attempting to fit into white society, wherein I felt I deserved to be treated as an equal, it was important to me that I didn't use the word because I felt it made us less than. I felt that our using that word was a bad thing because white people cringed when we said it, because certain Black people cringed when we said it. To me, it just didn't make sense to keep using it, especially because it remained controversial. I did what I always did with most things. I didn't want to deal with it. Buried it. I wasn't just trying to bury the N-word, though. in bearing the N-word, I was also bearing my queerness. If I couldn't see parts of my own Blackness as respectable, there was no way I was ready to see my queerness as respectable either. But now I know that queerness is part of Blackness, and that there is no Blackness without queer people. Then, in early 2012, Trayvon Martin was killed by George Zimmerman, and my entire perspective shifted on being a Black person in this society. I saw that the New Age civil rights movement was being led by people who look like me, people who were fighting for me and other Black children. It was during this time that my unlearning process really began. My eyes were opened by seeing the shooting of Black people at the hands of police, seeing the killing of Black children like Tamar Rice at the hands of police, seeing that it didn't matter whether you were an affluent Black or a poor Black, a child, or an adult. In the society, in the eyes of society, I was still an N-word. And my love for my Blackness meant that I had every right to fight for my people and every right to take back ownership of the word. So I started using the N-word again. I understand that my Blackness is self-defined, and that the use of the N-word or not use the N-word is my choice. But it shouldn't be based on the comfort of those who constantly seek to invalidate me. I understand now that there is no such thing as a respectable Negro in the eyes of society, nor was I ever made to be one. Black. My second identity, queer, is a journey that I will be on until the day I die. And I honestly believe that. Every day I learn something about myself. I get to sit and look back at all the times my queerness displayed itself, both in ways known to me and unknown to me. As a child, I always knew I was different. I didn't know what that meant at the time, but I now know it was okay to be that different kid. That being different didn't mean something was wrong with me, but that something was wrong with my cultural environment, which forced me to live my life as something I wasn't. The fact that I couldn't see my full self in Black heroes or the history books was more about the changing of history and the spare white guilt that it ever was about me knowing the whole truth. I learned that kids who saw me as different didn't have an issue until society taught them to see my differences as a threat. Those differences, like being effeminate and sassy, were constantly under attack my entire childhood from kids who didn't even know why I needed to be shamed for those differences. It wasn't them shaming me as much as it was those raising them who taught them to shame me for those qualities. Most kids aren't inherently mean. Their parents, however, can make them mean. By the time I reached middle school and high school, suppression was my only option. I have become even more of a minority in the population, and I had to deal with the intersection of Blackness and queerness and the double oppression that generates for the first time ever. Fighting for Blackness in a white space came naturally to me, though, and I did it every chance I got. Fighting for my queerness, however, never seemed to be a viable or safe option. I lived in that isolation for all those years in high school. I only saw snippets of queer representation in small television roles They were rarely played by people who looked like me, but it was never to the extent that I ever gained the confidence to be that person. Thankfully, college opened my eyes to true reflections of myself in literature and art in class beside me. Not not early on, but right on time. I realized that the things I had always been running from had never left my side. That that the things I had been chasing were all a myth to turn me into someone I didn't want to be. In college, I took a risk and did something that was so far so far from being queer that it should have put me deeper in the closet. I joined a fraternity. I was trying to preserve an image of masculinity for myself, something that Black fraternities have run on for years. However, in finding that frat, I found myself. I found brothers with a common experience chasing the same thing. And instead of the universe giving us what we thought we wanted, it gave us what we actually needed. It gave us unconditional love and brotherhood, and from a shared queer experience. It gave me brothers who could see my humanity outside of my queerness. It gave me the confidence to define my Blackness and my queerness and my manhood and my masculinity, or lack thereof. I got to live in my totality and, for the first time ever, exist as both Black and queer in the same space and be loved for it, not shamed. Queer. I think that's as far as I'll go. And then you guys can get the book. Because it goes on for a while. And I don't know how long I was reading. But
that was great.
Often I say that I went through a similar experience. So I would like to say that I'm a fine blend of masculinity and femininity, sometimes more feminine than society would like me to be. But that this book is totally relatable, and I recommend it to those maybe you are in the closet, or maybe maybe you're in high school right now and trying to figure it out. This is a journey that a lot of us take, and reading this book, if I had this book, would have made it a lot easier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was sitting here thinking about how well all of these different readings we did tonight like spoke to each other, which everyone chose independentally, but I felt like everything just sort of tied together, and that one I felt like just kind of tied a bow on everything that had come up in a lot of the earlier readings throughout the night, from intersectionality. We talked about Langston Hughes, someone who was not able to be out as gay. And so, yeah, I think that was just a perfect way to end the evening here. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. All right, so that is pretty much going to do it here. I'm going to bring all of our folks back in. Thank them all for being here. So we got Garrick, got Kelsi, got Audrey, got Evelyn. I think Tiffany and Sassy had to.
Did they dip out?
Yeah, I think they had to head out. But yeah, I just want to thank you all so much for doing this, for taking the time to be with us here tonight. I really enjoyed all of the readings. Yeah, again, Evelyn's book is on Amazon. What's the title one more time for folks, Evelyn?
You can find it under A Lifetime of Lessons Carried On.
All right, great. Definitely get that. And again, thank you, Audrey, Kelsi, Garrick. Yeah, this is really great.
I think we should do this again. I love that.
I think so. I think we might make this a regular thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. I love it.
All right. Well, thank you all. Everyone have a good evening. Happy Black History Month. go read some Black literature, not just but all year long, not just this month. But use
365.
Yeah, exactly. All right, have a good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.